Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Thank you very much for joining us for Point of View. Did you watch the Oscars over the weekend, or did you even pay attention to the Oscars and who won? Or are the Oscars and the Academy Awards becoming increasingly irrelevant to you? Last week, before the Academy Awards, in anticipation, the Wall Street Journal published an analysis of the fact that they say the gap is widening between the movies that win Academy Awards and the ones that top the box office. And they give some statistics to support that. They say between 1983 and 2005, every Best Picture winner was among the 25 highest grossing releases during the year that it opened. Often they were among the top two when you think about hits like The Titanic or Forrest Gump, Rain Man, Terms of Endearment. But that string was broken in 2006 when a movie that I don't even remember called Crash won Best Picture but came in number 49 at the box office. And the Journal says that started a new streak, and with just 4 out of the last 12 Best Picture winners have been among their year's 25 highest grossing releases. None has ranked higher than number 15. There was an exception. That was Dunkirk in 2017. I was nominated for Best Picture, didn't win, but it was the 14th highest grossest movie of 2017. But the Wall Street Journal explains that the movies, they explain this phenomenon by saying that the movies that are the most popular have been the sequels, like Wonder Woman, the Marvel movies, Star Wars franchises. But I have another possible explanation, and that is, you know, when they use the word irrelevant, it's really true. Because the Best Picture, of course, this year turned out to be The Shape of Water. And just quoting the Journal about this, it was a fantastical love story about a mute woman and an amphibious creature. So it's really a movie with the theme of bestiality. And then there was some other things that happened during the Oscar. Actually, the host, Jimmy Kimmel, joked about the phenomenon of the unpopularity of the movies that are nominated. He says, "We don't make films like Call Me By Your Name to make money. We make them to upset Mike Pence." That was his joke. Well, Call Me By Your Name is about an adult man who seduces a teenage boy. So the theme there, pederasty, really fun to watch on a Saturday afternoon, don't you think? And then when you look at these awards programs, they are increasingly to the left. If you watched it, and I didn't, but I read about it, there was so much liberal sort of politics in the Academy Awards. And there was one best, I guess it was the best song that was nominated, and they brought up 10 activists. One of them was the CEO of Planned Parenthood, Cecile Richards. She was up there. Stand Up for Something was the song. And among the things to stand up for, of course, they meant women's rights. And, of course, women's rights to the left, top among them is abortion. So they brought her up. So it's just sort of the idea that the movies, although there are many, and I am a movie fan, I love to go to the movies, but I don't often anymore see the movies that win Academy Awards. And there's this gap, and that's why, because they're increasingly irrelevant to the rest of America. Well, we've got a show, speaking of the issue of abortion and the sanctity of human life. That's what we're going to talk about for really the entire program today. And we will welcome your calls later in the program. But I want to bring to the microphone now someone who's been in the pro-life movement a long time, and I've known her for quite a while. And her name is Janet Morena. And Janet is the executive director of Priests for Life. And she's also co-founder of the Silent No More Awareness Campaign. And we have had spokespeople from both of those groups on our program many times over the years. Janet is a former New York City public school teacher. And since 1989, she's held numerous roles in the national pro-life movement. So I'm going to ask her how she moved from public schools to pro-life activism. And, of course, many of us who are in the pro-life movement are very glad that she did. When she left, though, she said to do pro-life work, she told her teacher colleagues that she'd be helping them with job security. And perhaps she has. She's done a lot. She's also co-host of Defending Life and the Catholic View for Women on EWTN. And she's the best-selling author of another book we interviewed her on, Recall Abortion, which was published in 2013. And her new book, which we're going to discuss today, Shockwaves, Abortion's Wider Circle of Victims, published just in January of this year. She's a native of Brooklyn, New York. And Janet, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me, Penna. And, yeah, what I told my colleagues who were all liberal in the New York City public school was, well, ladies, I'm leaving to stop the killing of unborn children through abortion, and this will help you with job security, because if we keep aborting the children, your class size will go down, hence less teachers. Isn't it ironic that the National Association of Teachers, the NEA, they always back, in the UFT in New York, United Federation of Teachers, they always back the Democratic pro-abortion candidates. Isn't that ironic that they're in the business of teaching children, and yet they back the candidates that want to kill the children? And go figure that. So I kind of made that statement as I left, like, come on, wake up. You can't be having a pro-choice position, pro-abortion, and want to teach children, because you're going to run out of students if you keep aborting them.
Sometimes the left doesn't think things through that far, Janet, but I'm glad that you do. And, this book, I mean, talk about thinking things through. This book takes abortion from the decision that a woman makes to have an abortion, and sometimes it's not a decision, you're sort of forced or coerced, but it takes it all the way through to, the effects and the furthest reaches of society and on the entire society. It makes a very logical, compelling case for that. It's called Shockwaves, Abortion's Wider Circle of Victims. And you compare in the book abortion to an earthquake with aftershocks. Right. Explain that.
Well, we think, Penna, at the epicenter of every abortion, obviously, is the death of that unborn child that's actually brutally destroyed their life. But then what happens? That shockwave reverberates out, obviously, first to the mother and then to the father. And a lot of people, they just focus on the damage to the woman. But the damage goes also to the father. And what about the grandparents? What about those parents who took their daughter for an abortion? Well, they're taking their daughter to kill their grandchild. So that has a deeper level there. And then what about the grandparents their daughters went off and had an abortion, and they didn't know about it? And they found out years later that they lost a grandchild to abortion, and they have to grieve and mourn that too. And then it goes further. I mean, when you think about that child that's aborted, well, then let's say, I have sisters or that had abortions, which is not true, but let's say I had. Well, then my children don't have cousins to play with, right?
Yeah.
And then there's other people who are missing nieces and nephews. So the effect going out through the whole genealogy of a family, and one of my chapters I talk about missing from the family picture and then missing from the family tree, it's very dramatic. And we are finding through the Silent No More Awareness campaign that more and more people are coming to healing. We're getting grandparents now. We're getting siblings who are realizing there's someone missing from my family. And we're getting them to healing because
and that's
they're
the good
realizing
news, isn't it? Let me jump in, Janet, because that is the good news. There's good news at the end of this, but we want to kind of tell the story and unpack it a little bit. I'm so glad that Janet Morena is with us. And, really, out of Priests for Life comes a lot of common sense about abortion. So today, we're going to talk about it. Stay with us. We'll be right back for more of Point of View.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, the tax reform bill that Congress passed in December will remove the individual mandate to have a government-approved health insurance plan starting next year. Callers to my radio program wonder if that will allow them to buy a low-cost health insurance plan. That isn't so easy to answer. Dr. Merrill Matthews was on my radio program a few weeks ago and suggested to members of Congress how they could provide a clear answer. His recent article in The Hill provides a clear action plan for Congress. There is a reason that insurance plans under Obamacare were so expensive. In order to qualify under the federal guidelines, every plan had to include what were called essential health benefits. These mandated coverages and requirements made health insurance plans more expensive. Now that the individual mandate is lifted, many Americans would like to buy a less expensive insurance policy. In fact, many would like to buy the policy they had before Obamacare prohibited insurance companies from providing them. You may remember that President Obama claimed that if you like your health plan, you can keep it. Unfortunately, millions of Americans were not allowed to keep the policy they had before Obamacare kicked in. The solution is for Congress to allow insurance companies to offer non-qualified health insurance plans. In other words, allow them to offer plans that Americans had before Obamacare disqualified them. Many callers complain that the policies that they are forced to buy now are too expensive and have such high deductibles that they are essentially useless to them. Idaho recently announced that it would test the situation under the current law. It will allow insurers to offer comprehensive coverage outside of the Obamacare exchanges that does not include mandates. No doubt its decision will be challenged in the courts, and that is why Congress should clarify the current situation. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Irwin Brothers Entertainment, I Can Only Imagine. Rated PG in theaters March 16th. More information at ICanOnlyImagine.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. Sometimes when you want to make a point, you paint a picture, and Janet Morena's book, Shockwaves, Abortion's Wider Circle of Victims, does just that, because it starts with the child aborted and the loss of that human life, and then it draws circles, concentric circles around and around it, of the different people and groups and broader groups that are affected by abortion. And so it really, I would say the book contains a lot of information in here, so it's a primer on abortion, but it paints the picture in a very compelling way to help us understand it. Janet Morena is the author, and she's my guest today. And I posted, so Janet has become a parent. She's with Priests for Life. She's Catholic. But I put a Southern Baptist piece up on the website from the ERLC, the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, the Southern Baptist Convention. And this is by Garrett Kell. And the title of the article is Why an Unwanted Pregnancy is About the Baby and the Father, too. And it's about someone who was part of his girlfriend's abortion. And he writes, in recent days, I've had, this is years later, I've had conversations with several women who have challenged me to remain silent about abortion. He's regretted his role in that abortion. He says, I've been told it is a woman's body. She has the right to choose what to do with it. And you're a woman, you're a man. You have no right to tell a woman what to do with her body. And the article really talks about how he does and just makes a good case there. And so, Janet, that's your next victim in a sense. You have the baby, the woman, but also the father of the child is affected, correct?
Absolutely. And for the men, there's a two-sided coin here, Because some of these men told their girlfriend or wife to have the abortion. You know, she says, "Oh, I'm pregnant, honey. What should we do?" As soon as she asks, "What should we do?" she's looking for him to say, "We can get through this. We'll have this baby together." But a lot of these guys just say, "Well, go have an abortion. I'll pay for it. I'll take you." Some of them won't even take them. They just drop them off, and that's it. You know, and so they're complicit in this abortion. They're responsible for not standing up to her. She's losing hope and not being supportive. But unfortunately, some men, because of Roe v. Wade, if they say to that same woman, "Oh, this is wonderful, honey, you know, we'll get through this together, don't worry," she says, "No, I'm not going to have this baby." She has the right, now picture this, she has the right to go in and kill his child, and he can do nothing to stop it. That is very damaging for men because, you know, by nature, men are men who stand up for their family, stand up for their wives, right? Be protectors. And for a woman to tell a man, "No, I'm going to have the abortion anyway," he's losing his manhood, so to speak, because she's denying him the right to protect his own child. It's very, very damaging. Either side of the coin is damaging, but I think it's even more damaging for the man who wants to stand up for that child and has no legal standing and can't.
Janet, we keep hearing the mantra, "It's a woman's body, it's a woman's body." And yes, it is my body, but that is a unique human being. And as you mentioned, the father had a role, and he also has just a God-given protector role that God has just given men that the men that don't feel like they need to protect their baby, there's something off there, either sin or something else. So it's natural for them to want to protect the child, right?
Yeah, well, it's a very natural, it's part of our nature, you know, women to be nurturing, to want to give birth to a child. That's a part of our actual nature, and for men to be protectors. But, you know, what abortion does, it just throws all that out the window. And for a man, it strips his fatherhood from him. He has no legal standing. And when you think about it, like you said, from the moment of conception, that is a separate, unique human being, separate DNA. And as the child develops, it has its own fingerprints that are so unique. You know, so it might be being nurtured in her body, but it's a unique individual. And, you know, just because it's not the right circumstances doesn't give us the right to destroy the life of that child. You know, and as you know, in my previous book, I went through all the hard cases, rape, incest, life of the mother, a fetal anomaly. I mean, there's never, ever reason, Hannah, where an abortion is always bad for the baby, but always bad for the mother and father, too, because of the damaging effects that abortion has on them.
Yeah, I mean, let's just go back because we started with the epicenter, the death of the child, and then there's the mother. And we just have to remember that it's damaging to the mother, whether or not it renders her sterile or does something else physically to her. It's very difficult. And I know this from 20 years of broadcasting and doing pro-life shows. Women call in just every time and you cry. And this time I found myself in tears when I was reading your books and some of the stories of the women, because a lot of times it's their decision. Other times they're forced into it. But whatever it is, there's no way you can get around the effect on the woman of the abortion. Right?
That's right. Yeah, oh, absolutely. It has, first of all, so many of them, it has a physical effect. First of all, the abortion it's not like Planned Parenthood and the abortion clinics make it sound. Have the abortion today, go back to school, work tomorrow, no big deal. No, it's a very painful procedure. It's a very invasive procedure. Most of the time it's done with very little or no anesthesia, so they're in a lot of excruciating pain. Their cervix is being prematurely dilated than what it should be, and the compromising of that cervix is an explanation why later on when women want to have that baby, that now they want to have it, a lot of them have multiple miscarriages because the cervix has been compromised from the abortion. And so the physical damage, the list goes on and on. I mean, I can introduce you to women. The only child they ever conceived was a child they lost to abortion. Some of them later on had to go on and have a hysterectomy because of complications, perforated uteruses. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on of the physical damage. Then there's the psychological damage. I mean, like we said earlier, you've gone against what God intended for a woman, that nurturing nature for us to be life-giving, and now you flip that upside down. It has an effect on you. It has a severe effect on you psychologically because you're responsible for the death of this child.
So if you have your abortion, you know, we can tell that we're pregnant very early today.
Right.
And if you have the desire for an abortion, or you decide for an abortion before 9 weeks, you can do it with a pill. And that, right, Janet, sounds very easy. but it's not. And as a matter of fact, when I think about that part where you actually deliver the baby at home without any medical personnel around, I mean, to me, that's almost harder than a surgical abortion. Talk about it.
Well, it is in a way because, first of all, we're talking about RU486. And what we do in RU486, first of all, the protocol for this drug is really ideally meant only up to 7 weeks, but they've expanded it under Obama that they're allowed to now do RU486 through all 9 weeks of pregnancy. And what you do is you take the first dose of the pill. The first pill is taken at the abortion clinic. And then the woman is given the second pill to go home and take 2 days later. So, okay, you've started the process, but now she is the abortionist because she is the one who's going to take that second dose, which is going to finish the abortion, and then she's going to expel that dead child in either her bathroom, in the toilet, or in her bed. So now that becomes the abortion clinic to her. So talk about triggers. She now has done what the abortion doctor would have done, and now her home or her apartment, wherever she's living, has become the abortion clinic. We're finding on Rachel's Vineyard Retreats, which is a Ministry of Priests for Life, the largest healing retreat worldwide, women who are coming there to be healed from RU486 abortions are more traumatized than the surgical, and it's just because of the whole experience. But there is good news in this because on the pro-life side, Penna, we've had women who take that first dose in the clinic, and they begin to change their mind, and they start asking around. Well, abortionreversal.com is a website you can go to, ladies and gentlemen.
You can reverse that?
Yes, you can. We've had hundreds of babies born successfully healthy after taking just the first dose, not the second, and changing their mind. If you call the abortion clinic, they're going to tell you it's too late, that you have to take the second pill. But if they can reach out to a pregnancy center or call the hotline at abortionreversal.com, they'll be put in touch with a nurse practitioner who will find a doctor, nearest doctor in their area, who can help them begin to reverse the process and can have a healthy baby.
If you've got a question or comment on the aftershocks of abortion, we'd love to hear from you. 800-351-1212. My guest is Janet Morena. And this is a timely program for me to do because 2 weeks from today, I've got a little granddaughter due. And, you know, we can talk about the grandparents, and Janet already laid out the really the sadness for the grandparent that I think in many cases when a woman has a daughter who's expecting, you know, and it's illegitimate, she's not married, she's maybe in high school or whatever, and you think about her future and you think, no, let's just get rid of the problem. Well, it becomes a problem for her, it becomes a problem for her husband, and it becomes a problem for you, the grandparent, because there's a sadness. I mean, there is nothing like being a grandparent. I don't think that until you become one, you know what it really feels like. And to be missing that grandchild, and partly because of your own advice or because you paid for it or because you drove your daughter there, or your daughter-in-law or the girlfriend of your son or whatever, that, you know, may seem like the right thing to do at the time, but it can affect you for the rest of your life. There's so many aftershocks and shock waves from abortion, and that's what we're talking about here at Point of View. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Sarita is a Point of View listener in Georgia, someone probably a lot like you. Listening to your program, she writes, has helped me realize that I do have the power to conduct change in my area and this nation. And with all of the online tools you provide, this power has become even more apparent to me. What can one person do? A whole lot, says Sarita. And then she says, and together we can get even more done. She's right. Sarita is right. This is a moment of opportunity, and together with you, Point of View is looking to accomplish a lot. This program and those online tools she mentioned will only continue being available if we hear from people like you this week. Join Truth Team 360. There are many levels. Check them out. Choose the size of the part you can play at pointofview.net/team or call 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
And our call-in line, our caller line is 800-351-1212. And my guest is Janet Morena. She's got a new book out called Shockwaves, Abortion's Wider Circle of Victims. And she's also executive director of Priests for Life and co-founder of the Silent No More awareness campaign, which really is a campaign that has encouraged women over the years to share their abortion story and the damage that's been done to them, over years of having had an abortion, things like that. So, we're asking you if you want to share something like that with us, that you can call in. It's 800-351-1212. But we were talking about grandparents, Janet. Many grandparents of aborted children have no idea how deep that wound is going to be when they've encouraged or helped or paid for an abortion for their child. A lot of them will insist it's for the daughter's sake, but it doesn't necessarily turn out to be that way, does it?
No. And, one case that I can quote out of my book was Karen Reynoso and her mom, Miriam. And unfortunately, Karen had not one, not two, not three, but 4 abortions. Wow. And the mom helped bring her for these abortions. And the mom says that she herself was pregnant at 16 and married the father, and by 21 had 4 children, and she had one child after the other, and she thought of herself as an old lady, that she had given up her youth. And she said she wanted to save Karen from that. And she says, well, Karen was a little wild in her ways, and I didn't feel she was equipped to be a mother. But thinking back, I could have stepped up and done something. That's one of her regrets. And she said, what if we had walked into a pregnancy resource center instead of the abortion clinic? But Miriam did take Karen for these abortions, all 4 of them. And after the last abortion, Karen said to her mother that I wanted to die, but she was afraid to kill herself. And soon after that, both the mother and Karen did find Jesus, and they went to an abortion recovery program together. They did name the children, David, Joseph, Sarah, and Stephen, and they had a memorial service that the whole family attended. But what's most striking about this story is Miriam, the mother. She says years later she was putting up Christmas stockings that she makes herself, hand does, for all her grandchildren. And this one Christmas, she's hanging up the stockings for, of course, her living grandchildren. And suddenly she gets an aha moment, cries, and thinks, but what about these other 4 that I was responsible for having Karen abort? She then has made stockings for those 4 children to put their names on them. And now every Christmas hence, she hangs up all the stockings, both for her living grandchildren and the ones that she lost to abortion. So, it's an ongoing process, Penna. Like once they get that realization, something has happened. I'm mourning. I'm going to go through healing. I'm going to find Jesus. I'm going to reach back. And then the healing continues, as you can see by Miriam, having to now make those Christmas stockings and come to the realization that we have to remember these children, too. Their lives did matter, even though they were snuffed out at such an early stage.
When we think about the idea of abortion and that child, and we know, just from looking at the early sonograms, that it's a human life. And so we protect that life and all of that. But the difference between a child at the same stage of gestation that's wanted and unwanted is amazing. And I got very emotional today reading your book and thinking at the same time that in 2 weeks, my little granddaughter is going to be born. And the difference between one who, ever since we knew about her, we've been so excited. And last weekend there was a shower for her mom, and there were all these wonderful things for the baby. And, we just can't wait. We're making our plans. I'm going to take care of her her older sister when her mom is having the baby. And that's the wanted side of it. But there's the unwanted side that's so different.
Absolutely. But you know what, Penna? Your grandchild is more than just wanted. She's being welcomed. And that's the real difference. You see? This is a child from the moment of conception. The family, your daughter finds out she's pregnant, and you're rejoicing. She's sharing all the ultrasound pictures, I'm sure, with members of the family. Some people have them framed on their desk at work or on a refrigerator. Oh, look. And then as soon as they know the sex, a lot of people are giving the child a name. So now we start talking to the child, in utero, and we start calling them by their name. I did this with my own grandchildren. I used to go close to my daughter's tummy and go, "Hi, Vivian, it's Nana. I can't wait to meet you." And the baby's here, and they recognize voices. And so these are welcome babies. I'll never forget when I took my daughter to the OBGYN with my grandson, and when the OB, and this is when he must have been, because then she came up for follow-up visits and whatever, and he was now maybe a year and a half, all right, and the doctor walks in. And my grandson's not even looking in his direction. But as soon as he starts talking, he wheels around and he stares at him like, I've heard that voice before. He recognized the OBGYN's voice from when he was first born. Yeah, he did.
Wow.
But this is the whole thing. Our unborn babies, they hear, they know, and like with you can't wait. You're welcoming this grandchild into your family, but unfortunately, the children that are from abortion, they're not wanted and they're not welcomed, and that is damaging to the entire family. And that's basically the point I'm making in my book, that no matter who is involved, you are involved, like it or not, because someone in the family is missing, and eventually it will have an impact on you too once you come to that realization. Like Karen's mother, Miriam, is a perfect example. And there's another example in my book, a mother who forced her daughter, Kelly, forced her to have the abortion, and they didn't speak about it. And yet in her mother's home, she always had this empty frame on one of the shelves in her home, a picture frame that just was empty, and the mother couldn't explain. She had these other pictures of her other family members, but yet she had one empty frame picture. And Kelly says to everyone, "I think that was for my child that she made me abort."
They never talked about it.
They never talked about it. Never talked about it. But yet this empty frame stood there until the mother died, even. And Kelly, of course, took that empty frame and has it now in her home. But it just shows you that there's so much going on emotionally and psychologically that we're not even recognizing at the loss of these children.
We are taking your calls, ladies and gentlemen, at 800-351-1212. Let's go to Julie in Illinois. Hi, Julie. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
What's your story?
I basically just wanted to share that really quick, just to be an encouragement to anyone who may be listening, who may be in that spot right now where they're in an unexpected pregnancy and not really knowing, what to do or what they should do. I have had 2 abortions in my past, and it was many years ago before I came to Christ. But I do know that feeling where you think and you believe the lie that, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening to me and there's no way out and this is the only way. But I had those 2, like I said, years ago, and the repercussions from those, I would just not wish on anyone. I was listening to you guys earlier talking about how it damages the woman too, and I was just calling to say I absolutely agree that afterwards I slipped into a deep depression and even struggled with binge drinking and cutting, and I even turned to even more promiscuity just to cover up my shame from having those abortions. And I also just want to add, because I know this is a hot topic right now, about Planned Parenthood, that from my experience, that they certainly do contribute and they do pay for abortions. And I know, thankfully, it's coming to light, especially with all the undercover news reports and everything that are being exposed. But there's still a lot of people that think, oh, no, they help women. And that's just, especially with my story, that's simply not the case, where actually I called them and said, I can't have this baby. And they said, hold on. And then they got me information where I could collect money and the clinic where I could have the abortion. And they were very much a part of that, hugely. And I just wanted to just put that out there just in case, just from a personal story of someone who has been through it. But also just finally, just an encouragement for those women. I just want to say that had I been, thinking clearly and not believing lies, in a heartbeat, I would go back and I would keep my children, my pregnancies. And I know that maybe it would have been, not perfect, but it would have been okay. And I think that's what girls and even young adults, women of all ages really, they need to know that when they're facing a pregnancy with a lot of unknown factors and a lot of fears and a lot of what ifs, is that there is help out there and there are options. There's, options and programs obviously to help women, who are in a tight spot, and also just adopting and other ways too.
Julie, thank you for sharing your story. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. In 1977, the Internal Revenue Service tried to declare that Catholic nuns operating in a hospital was not a, quote, religious function. Congress responded by amending the Employment Retirement Income Securities Act, or ERISA, to prevent the IRS from deciding what is or is not a church. Nonetheless, class action lawyers recently tried to argue that because some religious hospitals established pension plans, ERISA's exemptions did not apply because those plans were not established by a church. Well, a unanimous Supreme Court recently rejected that reasoning. The court recognized that Congress's amendment of ERISA continues to protect religious organizations from the burdens of ERISA, foreclosing the possibility that the IRS could bankrupt a religious organization simply because it does not believe the organization is religious enough. First Liberty Institute filed a friend of the court brief in this case on behalf of several religious organizations. As my colleague Justin Butterfield said of the decision in Advocate Healthcare Network versus Stapleton, quote, the history of the United States of America is one requiring the government to respect the religious freedom and autonomy of its houses of worship and religious organizations. The Supreme Court's decision respects that great history and tradition, allowing churches, synagogues, mosques, and religious ministries to pursue their religious mission without the weight of government bureaucracy and regulation hindering their efforts and intruding upon their mission. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
You can learn how to protect religious freedom in the workplace, public schools, your church, the military, and more by downloading First Liberty's free Religious Liberty Protection Kits at firstliberty.org. That's firstliberty.org. If you want hope for religious freedom, go to firstliberty.org.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
We want to thank Julie for calling in and courageously giving her testimony about her abortions and also her comments about Planned Parenthood and how they are definitely and truly complicit in encouraging abortion. They do other things. They provide contraception and other things. But if you look at the statistics of where their activities are today, the bulk of it is abortion. They are the largest abortion provider in the nation. We've placed and posted 3 articles about Planned Parenthood at pointofview.net. And when you go there, you can also find out about our guests today, Janet Morena's book and her bio and all of that. But one of the articles is about how Planned Parenthood is slamming the president, Donald Trump, because they say he's responsible for an unprecedented assault on abortion, and that's welcome. Also, Newsweek, there's a piece that we've posted that Planned Parenthood is starting a $20 million campaign. And by the way, we fund Planned Parenthood with our tax dollars. I know they have to do accounting tricks so that that money doesn't go back into campaigns, but they do fund pro-abortion candidates. And here's another interesting one. Nancy Pelosi, who's House minority leader, she is famously Catholic but pro-abortion. But she's even smart enough to know that in certain districts, she's going to back the pro-life Democrat because that's the person who can win. Of course, Planned Parenthood doesn't like that. So those 3 articles are up there at pointofview.net. But Janet, do you have a comment on Julie's testimony?
Well, of course. Well, first of all, she had her abortions because she went to Planned Parenthood, and she had no hope. She was looking for hope. Planned Parenthood doesn't give hope. They only give out abortions. That's all they'll do. I mean, imagine if they had asked her, well, do you want to carry this pregnancy to term? We could help you make an adoption plan. Maybe Julie's story would have been better or different had that option be there. But at Planned Parenthood, there are no options. And so where's the choice? Women are not given a choice at Planned Parenthood. They're only given one choice, abortion. That's it. They will never refer them to a pregnancy center. They will never offer an adoption plan, the SIPO. And it's ironic, Penna, that at this moment out in California, the pregnancy centers out there, they passed a law trying to force them, against free speech, forcing them to say you must refer the women who come to a pregnancy center for an abortion and post a notice. So, of course, the pregnancy centers are fighting this, and actually their case has gone all the way up to the Supreme Court. A good friend of ours, Tom Glester from NIFLA, the group of family life advocates, their case is going to be heard in 2 weeks at the Supreme Court, NIFLA.
Maybe settle this once and for all.
Well, I hope so, because this is really, if they win, I hope to God they're going to win, because this is really a free speech thing. Why, and a matter of conscience, how can a pregnancy center who's there to save women and babies be told you must tell these parents and patients that they can go to Planned Parenthood? Well, I say, why shouldn't Planned Parenthood have to give options? And they don't. And yet they're getting billions of dollars every year of our taxpayer dollars, and they don't have to offer not one option to any woman walking in there. And Julie really is a victim of that because, she was pregnant, scared. What am I going to do? They only offered her an abortion. What if it was different? I think her children would be alive today. Was she given other options? But she wasn't.
Janet, let's complete the circle since we only have a few more minutes. And I'm so grateful for the book and for you joining me today. But we started with these with the aftershock, and the shockwaves of abortion starts, of course, with the abortion itself, and then it goes out. Of course, the baby's killed, the mother's affected, the father, the grandparents, the siblings you mentioned, and you'd think the surviving siblings are trying to understand their value as a human being, and then you move out the family, and this baby that's been aborted is missing from the family tree. But what about friends? I mean, a lot of times it's a friend who's taken their friend for an abortion. Maybe they've even offered help financially to do so. So they're affected too, correct?
Absolutely. It's a saying, the saying goes, if friends don't let friends drive drunk, then friends shouldn't take friends for an abortion. Same thing. It does have a damaging effect. There are many friends. They're guilty in so many different ways. How many young people in college hear their roommate's pregnant? Well, if you say nothing, you're complicit in the abortion, because if you spoke up, maybe your friend, your roommate wouldn't have gone for that abortion. Or maybe you drove them to the clinic or helped them pay for it. Any which way, you were responsible other than speaking up to saying, how can I help you, and take them to a pregnancy center. If you did that's wonderful and okay. But if you did any of these other things I mentioned, you're responsible for the death of that child, and eventually you're going to have to come to terms with this. And I know someone who basically has a donor that every year donates one check to this pro-life ministry for the exact amount she gave to her friend to have an abortion.
Wow.
And she became a Christian now. She does this in reparation for her part in the death of that child. And every year she writes a check for the exact amount that she gave her friend to kill that baby. And so it does have the effect on the friends. Many times at the time they don't think about it. They think they're helping their friend. But years later they come to realize, oh, my goodness, if I had spoken up, maybe that child would be alive today. My friend would not be going through the trauma they're going through now. So it does affect the friends very deeply.
Janet, just like I know the shock waves go out and there are others affected. What is the final effect that you describe in your book on the culture and the society as a whole? Because that's kind of where it ultimately ends, isn't it?
Well, sure, because we're all affected. First of all, we can talk about just the economy of it all. When you think about Social Security, they're saying is going bankrupt. There's not enough money for senior citizens. Well, imagine if all the children that were aborted were alive today, working citizens, paying into Social Security, then maybe we would not be having some of the financial problems we're having right now. That's just one outlook on it. But then also, too, those of us who work in the pro-life movement, we're also affected. We have to mourn the children that we couldn't save. You know, starting with the pregnancy centers, they're on the front lines all the time, trying to counsel women, or the people who do the ultrasounds on the women. And she connects them and sees that baby, or he listens to that beating heart, and then somehow leaves that pregnancy center and still has the abortion. They've already seen the image of that child. They've connected with that child. They have to mourn that child that they couldn't save. Those who pray outside of the abortion clinic, same thing. They see these women going in, and they're trying to help them and reach them, and they know they're going in there, and there's going to be a dead baby. They have to mourn the children they couldn't save. But even all of us who are in the pro-life movement in other aspects, what about those who are trying to pass a bill that they know is going to save some babies? And guess what? The bill fails. Well, they have to mourn those children that they couldn't save. And one of the exercises that Father Pavone and I do with the pregnancy centers, we actually go to some of their big conferences, as you know, Heartbeat International and CareNet, which are the big umbrellas for a lot of the pregnancy centers. We do a presentation for them, a workshop that talks about mourning the children they couldn't save for their volunteers and their counselors. And we recommend getting together once a month and them talking about those instances when they had that client, that abortion-minded client, they couldn't turn them around. Give them an opportunity to pray for that client, pray for that unborn child that was destroyed to abortion, and possibly name the child. And some people, they light candles, and they pray, and they talk about it. And then they feel so much better because they brought humanity back to that child, whose humanity, of course, was stripped away by the abortion.
Janet, wow, that's sort of a logical conclusion that we don't even think about it in a sense. But thank you so much for joining me today to explain your book. I recommend the book to folks because it's got the whole story in here. And so it's Shockwaves, Abortion's Wider Circle of Victims. You can find out more at pointofview.net. There are folks that have called in whose calls I didn't get to. I apologize. But I would ask you, we have a long break, that you would stay over the break. We're not going to stop talking about the issue of the sanctity of human life. I have two more guests coming in from an organization called Stand for Life. And they will join me, and we will take your calls. If you can either call back in about 8 to 10 minutes or stay on the line. We would love to take your call. I apologize for not doing so. But Janet, thank you so much for joining me today, and God bless your work.
Well, thank you, Penn. It was a pleasure. And I'll be praying for all your listeners that have been affected by abortion to find healing.
And we'll be back.
From Irwin Brothers Entertainment comes I Can Only Imagine. The untold true story of Mercy Me's Bart Millard and the power of redemption and forgiveness.
My dad was a monster, and I saw God transform him. I didn't think that God could do that.
I Can Only Imagine. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. In theaters March 16th. More information is available at ICanOnlyImagine.com.
When you listen to the news, do you ever feel like you're living on a different planet from those presenting the headlines? We've always known there was a subtle bias, but today, it's about as subtle as stepping off a 1,000-foot cliff. The only way to counteract that bias is with the truth. To join the Truth Team at Point of View, your support will educate and encourage potentially millions every day. Don't let lies win. Step up so that lives and our nation can be changed. Join the team at pointofview.net/team or call 800-347-5151. pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kirby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information. about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Thank you very much for joining me for the second hour of Point of View. Actually, this is the third hour now, because this week we started our Dallas broadcast, which starts an hour before our normal 2-hour broadcast. And so we're in the third hour for some of you folks. But I am so grateful for my two in-studio guests today, because during the last hour, I had Janet Morena, who's a veteran pro-lifer, with me. And, the pro-life movement started really before the Roe versus Wade decision and grew. And it has, it's a diverse kind of conglomeration of groups and people who are fighting for the sanctity of life. But you have to change and morph with the times, and you have to appeal to the generation that is actually making the decisions about life. And so I think that's what this organization that these two women represent does. It's called Stand for Life. And with me now is Hannah Sultemeier and Lindsey Washington. And Hannah was raised, they're both from Texas. They're Texas girls. Hannah was raised in Houston. She was 1 out of 10 children, and we'll let her tell the story about her family. She ended up getting her bachelor's from Texas A&M University and a graduate degree from Kennecott Institute. And then after a career that was sort of outside of the pro-life movement, she stepped in as executive director at Stand for Life in Dallas, Texas. And then Lindsey Washington is communications director at Stand for Life. And she was born and raised also in Houston. She got her BA in journalism, public relations, and new media with a minor in religion. What a great degree at Baylor University. And she has a passion for storytelling, which greatly appeals to the millennial generation. She met her husband at Sky Ranch camps. My kids went there. She lives also in Dallas. The two are in studio. Thank you, ladies, for being with me.
Thanks for having us. We're so excited to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're here. And, maybe, Elizabeth, Lindsey, I'll come to you first. And can you just pick up on what I just said about stories and how that the idea of telling a story that's filled with content, but also sort of emotion and passion, and a lot of times pictures, really it sends a message to this generation in a way that nothing else can.
Yeah, well, it's been interesting to see with storytellers and stories alike, because just the power, I guess, that stories have, because the pro-life movement has been founded on a bunch of different things, all in the pursuit of life, but a lot of times just with numbers on abortion, statistics on unplanned pregnancies, and kind of everything in the life discussion. And one of the things that we've seen with millennials is that they so badly want to see who is behind these numbers. And so with storytelling, we've been able to kind of give a face to the pro-life movement, a picture saying, hey, this is somebody who's walked this road, who has a story to tell and wants to tell that story to make a difference. And so stories have just been, it's been the biggest honor to tell stories, I guess, because we've let people know, like, hey, you have a voice and you get to be the face behind this movement and make a difference because of what you walked through and what you've lived. And
so, Hannah, I mentioned earlier that you're one of 10 children. I'm sure that family that you grew up in inspired your pro-life activity, correct?
Yes, absolutely. It completely formed the way that I see the world and the way that I look at every single person around me. Being raised in a home that started as just 3 biological children, but that grew into now being one of 10.
We started as a foster home, which was such a unique experience when I was in junior high, but getting to see not just babies, but toddlers come into our home and come from good and hard situations, but getting to hear the stories behind them, that how they got to us, but getting to hear really about their moms and their dad's stories as well made me have this broadened perspective of the life discussion, to see it in a really holistic approach, which was incredible. I don't even remember life before as just the three of us, but even now, my oldest adopted brother is now 18. I mean, getting to hear him talk about the experiences that he went through before the age of 3, and getting to see how he still looks at his birth mom as loved and valuable, as we call them in our home.
Wow.
Tummy mommies and forever mommies. That's my mom. I'll never forget. As soon as she got a new baby in the home, she would change their diapers and say, "Hey, your tummy mommy loves you," and I get the opportunity to be your forever mommy.
Really?
And so just getting to see my mom emphasize the dignity in their mom and dad's life from the very beginning, alongside of having my brothers and sisters being in a really safe place, but still honoring their parents and their choice of life, changed and completely impacted the way that I have a passion for the pro-life discussion now.
Hannah, tell us about the genesis of Stand for Life. How did it start and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So Stand for Life started just a few years ago, the summer of August 2015, when the Center for Medical Progress Undercover Plan videos leaked that summer. Jess Barfield, who's the founder of Stand for Life, had saw the 7th video, and she just felt this crazy stirring in her that she had to do something. She had claimed to be pro-life her entire life, was raised in a Christian home, but got this crazy stirring from the Lord that I can't be silent about this. I have to do something. This is unjust, and I have to do something. But she didn't know how to respond. She didn't know where her space was to respond in the conversation. And so she was driving her 2 little boys home from her grandparents' ranch, and the Lord gave her this vision. So Jess is a very well-known wedding photographer here in the DFW area. But she would even tell you herself, she's not a graphic designer. She doesn't enjoy graphic design, but the Lord gave her a vision for the life filter that you'll see over all of our stories and social media that says LIFE.
Okay, explain that.
So a life filter is on Instagram or on Facebook. You can place a filter of your photos, just like a Facebook profile picture, or a different color image, or kind of a graphic up the side. But she had a vision for the life filter, and it's a 4 grayscale image that has different colors of gray with life across it. She went home, created it, designed it, put it on her personal Facebook profile picture, and she said, "With all the love and grace in my heart, I believe that every life is valuable." And she looked at her husband, and she goes, "What should I hashtag? Should I hashtag something?" And she hashtagged Stand for Life, and it went viral. Within hours, hundreds of people are reaching out saying, "I want this filter too. I believe in what you're saying. I want this filter too." Within 24 hours, hundreds of people more had reached out to her personal inbox, to her other social media accounts wanting the filter. And so within this first 48 hours, she gathered a group of creatives here in Dallas and said, "Hey guys, the Lord is doing something. This is going viral. I can't manually filter all these people's photos. I need help filtering it." And so there was a gentleman who helped create a single landing page of the filter so that she wouldn't have to manually filter it. And within 72 hours, over 16,000 people had used the live filter. And what this group of creatives had realized is that organically, people were starting to share their heart for why they believed in the sanctity of all life and why they were passionate about the discussion. Some people are saying, "Because I have adopted 3 kids." Some people are saying, "Because I had an abortion, but the Lord has healed me." And so Jess looked to her and her girlfriends and said, "What if we just unified this voice and put all these stories on one place? What if we created a platform to unify the voice and unify the dignity of all life?" And so that was the birth of Stand for Life, something that went viral because the Lord wanted it to go viral. And since then, since August of 2015, we have shared over 700 stories of life.
And you can begin to take part in this you can just go to pointofview.net and click through, and we'll also get all the other ways that you can access this medium. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just another way. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So we have pictures, we have stories, and ways to communicate the beauty and the sanctity of human life. We'll talk about it more after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, the tax reform bill that Congress passed in December will remove the individual mandate to have a government-approved health insurance plan starting next year. Callers to my radio program wonder if that will allow them to buy a low-cost health insurance plan. That isn't so easy to answer. Dr. Merrill Matthews was on my radio program a few weeks ago and suggested to members of Congress how they could provide a clear answer. His recent article in The Hill provides a clear action plan for Congress. There is a reason that insurance plans under Obamacare were so expensive. In order to qualify under the federal guidelines, every plan had to include what were called essential health benefits. These mandated coverages and requirements made health insurance plans more expensive. Now that the individual mandate is lifted, many Americans would like to buy a less expensive insurance policy. In fact, many would like to buy the policy they had before Obamacare prohibited insurance companies from providing them. You may remember that President Obama claimed that if you like your health plan, you can keep it. Unfortunately, millions of Americans were not allowed to keep the policy they had before Obamacare kicked in. The solution is for Congress to allow insurance companies to offer non-qualified health insurance plans. In other words, allow them to offer plans that Americans had before Obamacare disqualified them. Many callers complain that the policies that they are forced to buy now are too expensive and have such high deductibles that they are essentially useless to them. Idaho recently announced that it would test the situation under the current law. It will allow insurers to offer comprehensive coverage outside of the Obamacare exchanges that does not include mandates. No doubt its decision will be challenged in the courts, and that is why Congress should clarify the current situation. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Irwin Brothers Entertainment, I Can Only Imagine. Rated PG, in theaters March 16th. More information at ICanOnlyImagine.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
The phones continue to be open at Point of View, 800-351-1212. And I did ask those that called in during the last hour to hold on. And one is a story, a testimony. And so I'd like to just kind of go there now because Beverly's been waiting a long time. She's in Texas. Just to begin the telling of stories that we're going to do today. So let's go to Beverly in the state of Texas. Beverly, thanks for calling in.
Hi.
What is your story?
My daughter we raised our children in a Christian home. I wrote plays and stories and newspaper articles about, against abortion and everything. But when she grew up, she went on her own way, and she had one abortion. And she thought that I would handle it great, but I didn't, of course, and she was really upset and shocked about it. But then she got married and got pregnant again, and her baby, the doctor said he had spina bifida, and she named him and everything, and she was 5 months pregnant, and she decided to have an abortion because she didn't want him growing up disabled. And she knows how I felt, but I don't know how to talk to her about it. I can't talk to her about it because she thinks she did a great thing. So I didn't go with her to the abortion clinic, but I went up there when she and her husband got there just to hug her and tell her I love her and just show that I loved her. And then when I got home, on the way home, I was just crying and crying and crying. And when we got home, we got out of the car, and a group of little boys were walking by. And one of them looked at me and goes, "Hi, Grandma."
Oh.
And I looked at him in the eyes, and it was at that moment that I knew that
I think we might have lost Beverly, but we have heard her story. And I mean, as a grandmother myself, I know how she must have felt getting called grandma when she had just lost her grandchild.
Right.
That's the power. I mean, you can't deny that. You know, I pulled something off your website, ladies, called Identity, and it says, in telling stories, we learn who people are. In telling stories, our beliefs are formed about other people and other things. We destroy barriers. We offer hope. And that's, to me, I am all about, and have been pretty much my whole activist career, about forming opinions, helping people form their opinions about things, because a lot of times they get their opinions from other places in the media and liberal universities and things like that. So sounds like that's what you guys are about too. Correct?
Yeah. And it's, been really interesting because amongst people our age, with the rising use of social media, and younger, we both have younger siblings that are on every social media platform that we don't even know exists. But we're finding that more and more people go to social media to find the basis for what they believe about everything. And more as time goes on, man, every topic is on the table and people put whatever opinion they want. And the more time goes on, the less and less truth is being sprinkled throughout the social media that everybody's seeing, ourselves included. And so we're finding that in conversation with people say, they spout off what they read on social media, and that's the basis of all that they have. There's no research on their own. There's no even second opinion on these issues that they are approaching. And so it's been a good challenge for us to be a voice that's rooted in truth and that is very aware of what we're sharing and very purposeful and encouraging. Like, hey, the truth that you're after, like, make sure that the information that you're seeking is rooted in truth rather than just somebody's opinion. And so it's been a real joy for us to figure out what is real about the sanctity of life and what we believe that the Lord has designed life to look like, and just every aspect of his design, to be able to go to truth, to find what the Lord says in his word about whatever issue it is, and then talk about it through the lens of.
So you add scripture and actually base some of your stories on scripture, or describe your stories with scripture?
Yeah. So our Stand for Life is based off of the Imago Dei, Genesis 1:27, that all life is created in the image of God. And so we have the unique opportunity. All those stories are written in the first person perspective of over 700 people. A lot of the stories have naturally and organically come from believers, people who are passionate about the gospel and have either come to know the Lord, or the Lord has totally redeemed their story and they want to shout it from the rooftop to everyone else. And so what's been really unique is that we have filtered everything that we do through the gospel, but we do it in a way that is compelling and attractive to all generations so that they would be invited into the story. I think as believers, we sometimes forget that the greatest gift that was ever given to us was God's word, the Bible, and that the Bible is a book of stories. And it's so unique that God wrote scripture. Scripture is God breathed in a way that would penetrate our hearts. And so what's been unique of engaging the life discussion in a compelling, graceful, empathetic way is that we are able to use stories to have people just consider a different conversation.
Since you operate over social media, can you explain to everyone the different and various ways that they can actually connect with Stand for Life?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who wants to do that?
Yes, I'll hop in.
Okay.
So we are on Instagram. Our handle is at Stand for Life Movement, all spelled out. We're on Twitter. Our handle is Tweets by SFL, which is fun. And
Tweets by SFL.
Yes, Tweets by SFL. And then we're on Facebook, and our handle is the same as our Instagram, Stand for Life Movement. And then we have our website as well that has all of our stories on there as well. And we're continuing to add as we continue to tell stories. We completely redid our website this past fall, but have had
it's beautiful.
Thank you. We have an incredibly talented graphic designer on the team that did so much work into it, and Lindsay's an incredible writer.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you're pro-life, and you girls are very winsome, and so you can share your own personalities and your stories with others, and you have already built a foundation upon which to do that through Stand for Life. So we're so grateful for that ministry and just very happy to have you. I do want to talk about the millennial generation. I know that, we have just a special day that we dedicate to millennials, and we bring different millennial young adults into our studio. And so we love to do that. It's usually on Wednesday, but I'm so glad I get to have you here. I'm the grandmother of the group. But, millennials are, according to statistics, more pro-life than their parents.
Yeah.
And so that's so encouraging, and especially on the issue of, the sanctity of human life and all of that, it's just very encouraging. And I think part of it has been the result of the pro-life movement, also science.
Yeah.
We see the baby, we get to look into the womb. Yeah. Many reasons why now we're getting that philosophy that these are human lives and we need to be protected.
Right. Yeah. I feel like our generation, the millennial generation, we're the image-based generation. We want to see, just like Lindsay had talked about a little bit before, but we want to see the faces and the names behind the statistics. And we're getting that. I feel like that's what's contributed so greatly to this robust advocacy for life in our generation. We're also getting to see just the heart behind people's passion for the discussion. We're getting to experience raw emotion behind people's stories. It's been pretty unique. Yeah.
Okay. I also looked on your website and saw some beautiful products, things that people can get a hold of.
Yeah.
How do you choose those? Do you have people that make them? Where does the funds go that people buy them?
Yeah.
I'd love to get answers to those questions.
Yes, absolutely. So Stand for Life, because it started with a team of creatives. There are lots of creatives that are been huge supporters of Stand for Life since the very beginning of August 2015. So a lot of those have been donated just because they want to support this conversation. Okay. They want to see people of our generation opening up their homes, their workplaces, different environments to have a conversation revolving the sanctity of life. And so a lot of people have donated a lot of those pieces, but the t-shirts with the filter on them, that was something that we created once the filter went viral. Those t-shirts were made within the first 2 months of operations to get just a symbol out there of, hey, this is something different. This is a way that you can unify your voice and say you stand behind something that is beautiful and compelling, and also gives you an opportunity to wear something that people can ask, why? What is it? Because it just says the filter, the Stand for Life underneath, but it says life. And so a lot of people go into stores like, hey, what does that mean? And it gives you a platform to talk about stories that are changing stories on Stand for Life.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to join our conversation, the number is 800-351-1212. And my two guests, Hannah Sultemeier and also Lindsey Washington from Stand for Life, are with me. Click through to pointofview.net and you can find out more about Stand for Life. And I think you'll be very impressed with the website and the ways that you can communicate with them. We would also love to hear from you. If you have a story that you would like to tell about life, we would love to hear it in this old-fashioned medium of radio. We're still around and we reach a lot of people, so we would love to hear from you. Again, the number's 800-351-1212. I'm Penna Dexter. My guests, Hannah Sultemeier and Lindsey Washington, here in the studio of Point of View, and we'll be right back.
Is religious freedom still a cornerstone of the republic, or has it effectively been crushed by the forces of tolerance? America needs Christians to be informed and as unified as possible, applying God's wisdom to civic life. Point of View can be a key part of a successful mission. I believe in America. I believe God wants His best for us. We can face whatever the world throws at us as long as we stand together. If you have not signed on, please do it now. Support Point of View Radio today at pointofview.net. Set up your monthly gift by clicking the Truth Team 360 picture and then carefully follow the directions. Pointofview.net. By phone, you can give at 1-800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Or mail that first donation to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Box 30, Dallas 75221. Or call us 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
We're telling the stories of life, and my guests in studio are Hannah Sultemeier and Lindsey Washington from Stand for Life. And there was one story that I found last night. It was about the Olympics. It was an Olympic story, an athletic story of a young Japanese figure skater. And apparently she went to a couple of Olympics. Her name is Miki Ando of Japan. And she was preparing to do the quadruple salchow, which is like amazing for a woman to do that. But then, she was preparing for, I think, the Sochi Olympics. And she found herself pregnant. And in Japan, when you're an Olympic athlete, that is the be-all, end-all, and nothing should stop you. And she made the decision. It was tough, but she made the decision to have the baby and drop out of the Olympics. And, of course, the public was very critical of her for doing that. This is 5 years ago, of course. She had the baby, a little girl. Her name is Himawari. She's now almost 5. And Miki is a professional figure skater now. She didn't go to that Olympics, no, but she's a coach and she's a television personality and she has her child. And so to me, that's the happy ending of the story. The other part of it is she sends a message to her culture in Japan that babies and careers are not mutually exclusive, something American women have probably learned a long time ago and are learning. But I think that, her story also proves that you have a baby, your life doesn't end. You might make a decision, you go through inconvenience and difficulties because of, this pregnancy that you didn't plan, but it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. And you have to sort of think beyond that. And that's why I love, Lindsay, that you guys are telling the stories, because it helps people think beyond this immediate, obstacle that they see in their lives, doesn't it?
Right. It does. And it's such a beautiful thing because our culture has not communicated the message that children are a blessing, whether it be the demands of working moms or, you could fill in anything that stands in the way that doesn't communicate that children are a blessing. But when we come back to that really simple truth, there's so much hope and there's so much just goodness in knowing that life was designed by the Lord and it has a purpose and it's a gift. And one of the things I think with telling stories that we get to remind people is that it is a really sacred gift to get to carry a child that's an image bearer of the King and then to get to raise that child. And man, just in telling stories, I think our hope is that people realize that, one, it's a gift, and two, you're not alone in it. You're not the only one who has experienced this life-limiting diagnosis or found yourself in this unplanned pregnancy or found yourself not being able to have a child. This is the stories of tons of people. You're not alone, and there's people out there that are walking the same journey and are eager to come alongside of you and eager to remind you of the hope that you have in that.
So when you think about your ministry, is the purpose of your ministry just for people to be able to tell their own story and also just for encouragement and sort of helping people think about life from the opposite perspective than what our culture does now?
Yes, absolutely. And in addition to that, to challenge people to learn a new way to engage this conversation from an empathetic standpoint. I feel like the vision and hope of Stand for Life is to provide hope to people who are finding themselves in crisis pregnancies, that are finding themselves with a life-limiting diagnosis, that are finding themselves struggling with infertility, to see someone before them that has walked in the same shoes and saying, hey, I can do this too, even if it's really hard. And I think that's something that's been really unique. A dear friend of the Stand for Life community this past fall reached out to us in November and said, hey, I'd like to grab lunch. And I went to lunch and I sat down and she's like, hey, I'm just going to get really straight to the point. She was like, I love Jesus. I've claimed to be pro-life my entire life. And I found myself this past August in a crisis pregnancy. And she was like, and this is not where I'd ever sit. I'm almost 28 years old and I never thought I'd be here, but I am here. And she was like, it wasn't until I found myself in that moment that I realized that, oh my goodness, me claiming that I'm pro-life, me believing and knowing that God opens and closes wombs, that he is the creator of all life, became really real. And she said that in that moment, she started to panic and she confronted her boyfriend. And unfortunately, her boyfriend at the time responded that he would like her to have an abortion and suggested that multiple times. And she said it really rocked her and threw her for a loop because she's like, man, if I say yes to life in this moment, this means I'm saying yes to single motherhood. And so she said that she had this challenging time where it was really, really dark and she sought community. But she said for some reason, the Lord put stories of Stand for Life across the algorithm in her feed on social media. And during that time, we just got back from Young Lives Camp in upstate New York, hearing teen mom stories. And so we were doing a teen mom series, and these teen moms who were 14, 15, 16, 17 were sharing about just the power behind choosing life and how they didn't regret it. And she said that the Lord was sweetly speaking to her during that series over and over again. She would reach, so she even tried to almost unfollow us, that, hey, if these teen moms can do it, so can you. And she said that that was so powerful to her because she said she just needed to hear that there was hope in the midst of crisis, and her son will be here next month, which
exciting.
It's just unreal. So we've just watched stories time after time provide hope at just the right time, whether it's to friends of friends or it's to the direct source. They've just provided they've provided a space where only the Lord can work through, which is just so powerful.
What if the story doesn't turn out that way? What if the choice is for abortion and someone tells that story? or is sort of hurting now.
Yeah.
Because that's in their past. What do you do there? I mean, do you respond to the people that tell their stories? Do you all respond to them?
Yeah, we communicate with all of them. And I would just say, if you are hurting and that's part of your story and you've walked that journey, first, there's hope. And two, we just want so bad for you to be able to find somebody in your community. And honestly, if you are listening to this and you don't have somebody in your community, feel free to go to our website. It's just standforlife.org. And there's a link on the prayer request page where you can just email us and we can connect you to somebody in your area who would love to walk through that with you. But really we would just tell people there's hope. And we have tons of storytellers that has been part of their story, and they found redemption and healing in that as well. We have a very sweet storyteller that lives in the Northwest that actually followed Stand for Life for 1.5 years and read stories over and over and over every single day, would comment on them, would just engage with the storytellers on social media. And 1.5 years later, she ended up reaching out to us saying, hey, this was part of my story, and you sharing these stories has shown me that I'm not alone. And so I found hope in them, and I walked through healing because of it. And now I want to share my story because I want people to know that there is that hope. And so that very clearly answered your question, but if you are hurting, we would love to walk through that with you.
Yeah. Standforlife.org. Let's go to Georgia, where Kimberly is calling from. She has a story. Kimberly, thanks for calling in.
Hello. Thank you for listening. My story is this. In 1964, my biological mother was raped, and it resulted in pregnancy. She came from a very wealthy family, and even in 1964, abortion was very much an option. She stood up to her parents, and she refused to have the abortion. They sent her to the Crittenton home. I don't think those are open anymore, but they sent her there, and of course she had me, and she let me live. She stood up for me, even knowing that she wasn't going to keep me. She stood up and she fought for me. I am 53 now, and I have a son who is a preacher. He is an ordained pastor in Maryland, and he is a missionary, and he is reaching so many people for the glory of God. And he's just had a baby girl, and my heart gets overwhelmed just knowing it really doesn't have as much to do with me as it does my legacy, and the fact that by her letting me live, God is able to use my children and my grandchildren and just further his kingdom. So that's my story. And I also wanted to add one other little thing. In Luke 1, we're told about how when Mary approached Elizabeth and with the news that she was pregnant, that John leapt in her womb. And that, to me, has always been the clear-cut answer of whether or not that baby is a viable human being.
Wow. Thank you for making that point.
So
Great.
Thanks.
Well, thank you for calling in, Kimberly. What a beautiful story. And just the way it's turned out is so heartwarming. It sort of validates Jana Miranda's book from the first hour. Ladies and gentlemen, we will continue our discussion. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. In 1977, the Internal Revenue Service tried to declare that Catholic nuns operating in a hospital was not a, quote, religious function. Congress responded by amending the Employment Retirement Income Securities Act, or ERISA, to prevent the IRS from deciding what is or is not a church. Nonetheless, class action lawyers recently tried to argue that because some religious hospitals established pension plans, ERISA's exemptions did not apply because those plans were not established by a church. Well, a unanimous Supreme Court recently rejected that reasoning. The court recognized that Congress's amendment of ERISA continues to protect religious organizations from the burdens of ERISA, foreclosing the possibility that the IRS could bankrupt a religious organization simply because it does not believe the organization is religious enough. First Liberty Institute filed a friend of the court brief in this case on behalf of several religious organizations. As my colleague Justin Butterfield said of the decision in Advocate Healthcare Network versus Stapleton, quote, "The history of the United States of America is one requiring the government to respect the religious freedom and autonomy of its houses of worship and religious organizations. The Supreme Court's decision respects that great history and tradition, allowing churches, synagogues, mosques, and religious ministries to pursue their religious mission without the weight of government bureaucracy and regulation hindering their efforts and intruding upon their mission." To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
You can learn how to protect religious freedom in the workplace, public schools, your church, the military, and more by downloading First Liberty's free Religious Liberty Protection Kits at firstliberty.org. That's firstliberty.org. If you want hope for religious freedom, go to firstliberty.org.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. We are speaking with Hannah Sultemeier and Lindsey Washington from Stand for Life. And, you have the opportunity after the program is over. If you haven't shared your story with us, you can share it at standforlife.org, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, or other ways.
Yeah.
Instagram. And it's just another way of sort of telling the story of how important life is to God and to us. And so, one question I want to ask you before we go much further, because we'll end the show and I won't have asked. And that is, I've always been about passing legislation in the country and in the states to help limit and restrict abortion, to make abortion. I mean, we haven't overturned Roe versus Wade. Right. But to make abortion rarer, to have common sense parental involvement laws, abortion facility laws, to make them at least medically up to speed, all kinds of things like that. And we talk about that all the time on our program. It's been very important. We try to get that kind of legislation passed. Are those things discussed on your website? How do you guys feel about that? Is that not your part of this equation?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. There are so many incredible organizations that are engaging in political issues regarding the sanctity of life and studying policy, being invested in policy. But Stand for Life as an organization hasn't been called specifically to that area. The Lord has just provided such a unique platform for us to engage the heart issue of this. And we strongly believe that when hearts are changed about this issue, alongside of incredible organizations that are doing great things in politics and through policy, that change will happen. And so we have the honor and privilege of getting to steward heart change on our platform and getting to steward conversations, which has been, such a blessing.
Well, I think we mentioned earlier that the millennial generation is more pro-life, and just the sheer numbers and the bent toward protecting life among that generation, which is becoming more and more numerous in the voting public,
right,
affects what is done in Washington, D.C. or in the states without you even saying anything about it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of I don't know how familiar you are with the Ethics and Religious Liberty Council.
Oh yeah, I used to be on the commission,
yes,
actually.
But they do an incredible job of just providing educational and thought-provoking articles that challenge the conversation biblically and also politically. And we've just enjoyed getting to just read what they put out every single day. They have an incredible pro-life and human dignity article series that I would encourage everyone to sign up to
That's
get.
That's the ERLC.org.
Yes, yes, they're amazing.
We put an article from them up on the website today about fathers. Yeah. It's at pointofview.net, so you can check that out and go there. I recommend it too. Russ Moore heads up that organization, and very, very thoughtful and practical. It's kind of combining the two, which is great. Well, let's take another call. Catherine is in Texas, listening in on KBJS. Hi, Catherine. Thanks for calling.
Hi. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes. Well, maybe you could talk a little bit louder or into your phone better.
Is that better?
That's better. Go ahead.
Okay. I have a quick story. I know you're running out of time. This was 1979, different time. And back then, if you got pregnant out of wedlock or didn't want a baby or anything, I mean, it was just automatic. The thought would go to abortion. It was just, that was the next step. And there wasn't, like you said, in education for the women. My situation was that my husband committed suicide. And I had a baby that was 9 months old, and I got involved with a man pretty quickly, and he took advantage because of my emotional state, and I got pregnant and made it pretty clear he could not have any more children. So I'm left with this decision and hormones and been told it's just a tissue, and I aborted the baby, which, of course, I'm a Christian now, and I have regretted terribly. And but I have found forgiveness and peace and healing since then. It's been a lot of years. It's taken a while, but a lot of times the situation is forced, and the women just really don't know what to do. And even today, they really don't know what to do. But the thing is, the difference today is that they do have people to talk to. I had no one. I thought it was just my decision to make on my own. It was my body. That's what they kept telling us. It's just a tissue. And I went to Planned Parenthood, and they didn't really help me. They just, 30 minutes later, I wasn't pregnant anymore. So,
Catherine. Well, thank you for sharing it. You know, I will say, Hannah and Lindsay, that she talks about how that was then and this was now, but this is really still the case now, that in many cases, unless you have the right people around you, unless you know about Stand for Life or you know about a pregnancy center in your area, that often you do feel very trapped. And a lot of young women, their parents, they give them the wrong advice on this. So I don't think that Catherine's story is irrelevant at all, is it?
No, not at all.
No, and we've seen it, and we have had friends of individuals and individuals just message in on our social media platforms, and it's a story, a narrative that we hear often. And I think the important thing about it for all of us to realize is everybody's stories look different, but we all have a space in our communities to look out for the people that live next door and that go to our grocery stores and that have coffee at the same coffee shops as we do. And so a lot of our hope at Stand for Life has been for people to realize this may not be the story that you're walking, but there's probably someone, if not in your inner circle, pretty close to your inner circle, that's walking through this on some level, walking through some story that has an influence in the life discussion. And so it's important to ask questions of people around you, to be aware of who's around you and how they carry themselves, and just to take the time to take the eyes off of ourselves and to engage other people. And I think too often we take for granted the fact that us engaging other people's stories gives a lot of hope to people. And
It does. I mean, if, for instance, if Catherine had, we didn't have websites and social media back in 1979, but if she had a way, or people had felt emboldened to tell their stories, and she could see that she wasn't the only one, she might have had, she might have possibly had the courage to make a different decision.
Right.
And so that's why I think it's so exciting. And what you're doing is very exciting. It really, truly is. Well, I mean, what do you want to say to, because we only have about a minute left. And so, Hannah, what do you want to say to the listener of Point of View right now? How can they be involved? What if they're just a person who's pro-life, not really facing a crisis pregnancy at the moment?
Absolutely. We would encourage them to get connected with us on social media. We have a network of over 70,000 people that do engage on these stories. And we are sharing not just the first person perspective stories, but also educational content. And there's a lot of unique opportunities that come from engaging with storytellers that just the storyteller last week that give us very practical, tangible ways that we can come alongside of community, even if we're not facing that decision in the moment, which has been extremely influential and helpful to those who get to follow Stand for Life. So we would encourage them to follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook. From time to time, we have the opportunity, if they're here in DFW or if we've traveled to a storytelling event and get to share people's stories, to do Facebook Lives, Instagram Lives. And so you get to engage in real time with our storytellers. So we would love to encourage them to follow us. So when they're telling their stories that they can engage and dive deeper, because you never know when the Lord's going to provide an opportunity for you to speak into someone else's life.
Well, Hannah and Lindsey, thank you so much for coming into the studio and joining me today. It's been wonderful to get to know you and your organization.
Thanks for having us. Yeah,
and
thank
Andrew,
you.
thank you. Steve, thanks so much. Also, Karen for doing all the web work. And Kirby will be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.
In an age of fake news, getting good information is vital. Point of View works to bring you that each and every day. But as Diane in Arkansas illustrates, passing that information along, educating others, is something you can help with. Diane is a college professor. She influences the next generation, and she wrote, "Thank you for your informative letter. I used some of your quotes when I was teaching the Declaration of Independence in my literature class." Diane, like so many, hopefully like you, is taking what she received from Point of View in letters, online, through our app, on the air, and rebuilding truth in this post-truth culture. All of that takes a team. Join the Truth Team at Point of View. Find out how you can help at 1-800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Or sign up online at pointofview.net/team. Show your commitment. Make a difference today, right now. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.